I've been waiting on this for a very long time. A Paul George video. What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Lil Trey D back with another video. Make sure y'all follow me on Instagram. It's right there. And let's get on with this video. Mr. PP himself. Way off P, Pandemic P, wherever you say this guy's name. I'm making this video about how Paul George has a lot to prove coming this season. Because last season, Paul George, he had a decent year as he averaged 21 points, shot 43% from the field, and 36% from 3 on nearly 9 attempts a game. But when we get to the playoffs, Paul George played like garbage, but I'll talk about that later. Let's talk about Paul George and his career. So Paul George was drafted in 2011 by the Indiana Pacers with the 10th overall pick. And people viewed him as a two-way player because he obviously can play defense and he's a skilled offensive player. And the Indiana Pacers, they were at the bottom of the East until 2011 in his rookie season. He made them to a better team as they were the 8th seed as a 37-win team. Yes, a 37-win team. And then the Pacers kept getting better and better as in 2012, they almost defeated the Miami Heat, but they failed to them in 6 games. Then in 2013, they made their first conference finals for the first time since 2004. And obviously, they took the Miami Heat to 7 games, but they obviously lost as Paul George underperformed in Game 7 like usual. Then in 2014, they had the best record in the East, and people really thought that the Indiana Pacers were going to dethrone the Miami Heat, but that wasn't the case as the Pacers went out in 6 games. And then in 2014, more bad news for Paul George as he broke his leg in the Team USA camp, and he was getting surgery and was going to be out for the remainder of the season. But he came back a few months later and like the end of the season, but they still didn't make the playoffs though. But in 2016, he had a really good year that year too, as in 2016 he averaged 21 points, shot 44% from the field, and 36% from 3 on nearly 10 attempts a game. Then the playoffs that season, Paul George, he played alright. He outplayed both Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, but I don't know how the hell they still lost that series. Then in 2017, which was his last season with the Indiana Pacers, Paul George put up numbers of 22 points, shooting 44% from the field and 38% from 3, which is a career high. And then when we get to the playoffs, Paul George played alright until Game 4, where they got initially swept, obviously, by LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. As Paul George failed to show up in that game, as he shot like below 34% from the field, and also missed a wide open jump shot. So that was Paul George's last season with the Pacers, and then he gets traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the offseason for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. So Paul George in his first season with the OKC Thunder, he had a pretty good year, averaged 20 points, shot 42% from the field, and 35% from 3. But when we get to the playoffs, Paul George played like complete and utter garbage, as this man averaged 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists, shot 35% from the field, and 27% from 3 on nearly 11 attempts a game, I might add. And this man also turned the ball over 3 times a game. And then when we get to games 2, 3, and 4 against the Dallas Mavericks, Paul George was straight up ass cheeks, bruh. As this man averaged 11 points, shot 21% from the field, 21% from the field, and 15% from 3 on nearly 12 attempts a game. That's how awful he was in that series. At all expects efficiency, he was awful, just god awful. And he also got outplayed by 2 role players in Game 4, and Trey Burks and Seth Curry, as Trey Burks dropped 26 on his head and Seth Curry dropped 20 on his head. And then Paul George was just straight up dog shit against the Dallas Mavericks. Like, I can't even say nothing about his performance. It was just awful. This man was breaking layups. This man was breaking open shots. Like, this man was getting scored on every time, especially by Luka, because we all know that Euro step he did on him. That bitch was kind of cold. Nah, I ain't gonna lie. That Euro step was nasty. Paul George got cooked in that series. Like, he wasn't playing no defense. Barely was making his shots. Like, I don't know what was on Paul George's mind, but they still beat the Mavericks in 6 games. And then when we get to the next series, which was the Denver Nuggets, I know a lot of people ain't gonna say Paul George didn't play bad in that series, as he did average 21 points and shot 43% from the field. But yeah, Paul George, he didn't play that bad. But when we get to the second halves of those series, in between games 5 and 7, Paul George failed to show up in those big moments. And then when we get to game 7, it was awful. 10 points on 4 of 16 shooting, which is 25%. 2 of 11 from 3, which is 18%. And also had 5 turnovers. And Kawhi Leonard, he also not innocent in this game as well, as he shot horrible as Paul George. But Kawhi, he doesn't have a history of choking. Eddie didn't talk shit in that series. Paul George did. And Kawhi already proved himself, because at least he got a ring. What has Paul George done? Absolutely nothing but choke in the playoffs yet again. And then he want to go in here, drop these excuses, and then you decide to get that together when you clank a 3 off the side, the damn backboard, and that's when you start to get it together. This is a game 7 where you show up to play ball, not to just slack off and shoot 25% from the field. That's unacceptable. I don't care what anybody says about that. And I know Paul George is by far the most hated player because of that performance, not just in that game, but in the whole playoffs. As this man, and then this man want to drop some middle school ass quote, and then he want to say he's no James Harden, and that's when you start to get it together. Like I said, in the biggest of moments, whether it was in Indiana, whether against OKC facing the Utah Jazz in Game 6, or whether it was against the Denver Nuggets or Dallas Mavericks, Paul George fails to show up in those big moments. And in this season, Paul George is having 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists, shooting 51% from the field and 51% from 3. So Paul George is having a decent year, but can he keep that up? Because I know a lot of people say we don't care about Paul George in the regular season. We can see what he's going to do come playoff time. Because I know a lot of people don't care about Paul George's regular season numbers. They want to see what he could do in the postseason after the Clippers' collapsed last season, blowing their infamous 3-1 lead, obviously, and where Paul George was a part of that. And the Clippers blew their second 3-1 lead, but that was back in the Lob City era. That's another topic for another video. And Paul George, he has a lot of stuff to prove. Because Paul George, sure, he could have that jump shot, it be going in, sometimes he could catch fire, but when it comes to the biggest of moments, Paul George, he barely hit those, if we're being real. Because Paul George has an inconsistent jump shot. Because that jump shot is so inconsistent, I can't even tell if that bitch is going in. I couldn't even tell the difference between the rim and the backboard when Paul George shot those ugly ass shots. But hey, he'll improve on it. That that pull up mid range has been he's been killing it on that end. His defense is obviously the same. He led the league in steals 2 years ago, and he's still a great defender. So he could probably help his efforts on the defensive side of the ball. His playmaking's got a little bit better, as I said. He averaging 5 assists a game. So his playmaking's getting a bit better. And he's lowering his turnovers, as he's only averaging 3 turnovers a game. Or was it 2 turnovers a game. So he's doing decent protecting the ball, and Paul George needs to start being aggressive, because all that smooth dribbling ain't gonna get you nowhere. So Paul George, you need to change that up, and you need to keep on with your passing IQ. Because that could help a team too. Because the Clippers, they don't have a single playmaker on this team. Not even one. Sure, Kawhi Leonard improved on playmaking, but he's not an elite playmaker. Patrick Beverly's for sure not an elite playmaker. And Paul George is not a playmaker. And mostly they got all defense on them, as they just acquired Serge Ibaka in free agency. So they got some stacked defense after they lost Montrezl Harrell in free agency to the Lakers. And they replaced them with Ibaka to protect the rim. And obviously Ibaka's a better rim protector than Montrezl Harrell, obviously, because Harrell got absolutely destroyed by Jokic. But that includes this video. Paul George, you got a lot to prove on, buddy. But that includes this video. Make sure y'all like and subscribe to my channel. And do y'all think Paul George has a lot to prove? And hit the comment section down below. Y'all stay safe and stay healthy, y'all. This your boy Lil Trey D signing out. Peace.